Hello, everyone. How you doing? You're very welcome to this week's last word on Formula One with myself, Aidan Raftery, and of course, as always, donning his posh baseball cap. We have his Ferrari baseball cap, I should say.
My
We
my
have
my 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 limited edition, several times world champion Michael Schumacher Ferrari hat. Yeah, go
There
ahead.
you go. Not everyone is one of those. Michael O'Grady. Hello, Michael. How are you? Are you well?
I am not too bad. Happy Halloween to everybody. I know it's gone at this stage, but I hope you all had a good night on Tuesday. Nothing strange here, bizarre, unexplained. Actually, we're in the countryside, so we get no trick or treaters at all. But I brought my two into a local housing estate, 30 houses, and they came out with more chocolate than I've seen in Tesco's.
There you go. There you go. No wonder you sent them out, huh?
No wonder you sent them out.
You needed a stash for the Formula One
Absolutely.
Grand Prix this weekend, huh?
I keep hoping to give them stuff they don't like, and I do like, because then I can inherit it all. Like, you know.
There you go. Yeah, but you know, Anthony, inherit is subject to tax, so there you go when you think of it that way.
Well, I suppose, but you know yourself, it's one of the perks. You know yourself, Ross FM keeps us all on our toes.
Well, for this is it, especially you keep us out of trouble, huh? So
Yeah,
I
very
suppose
true.
on this week's show, I should say we have we're looking back at the Mexico Grand Prix, and
We
we're
are
looking
indeed.
ahead to the Brazilian, the Samba Grand
We
Prix.
are indeed. And for those of you who are watching the Mexico Grand Prix, I hope you were seeing a lot that was going on with the Day of the Dead that was happening at the same time. The festival's almost gone into a week long now. Of course, it wouldn't have been on the weekend, but like there was a lot happening on, you know, yourself going around the place and things like that. Actually, we must get out Ross FM to pay us to go out there now the next time, you know, because, you know,
Yeah.
Brazil, I have to admit, it's very warm today. I don't know about you, Ed. I like the way that you bring the background from Roscommon with you, so everyone thinks you're still in Roscommon.
Oh well, I am, you know.
Well, the Mexican Grand Prix is a funny old track because, of course, it's at high altitude. Well, not terribly high altitude, but a little bit. Which I mean, you know, can be a slight problem for the cars because
A bit like your house.
a bit like our house, exactly. That's why when I go down, I have a deeper voice. It could be a slight issue for the car, but it can be a slight issue for the drivers too. Now, for the likes of you and me, you know, wouldn't be that much of an issue at all. But like when you're going around a 4G corner in a car that's going as fast as it can, you know, a little bit of lightness in the air can make a big difference. You know, these things are super hot inside, and you know, it is hard for the drivers, even though they are like the fittest sportsmen out there. I mean, most of these guys wouldn't even think twice of doing two or three triathlons a year, wouldn't even bother them. But they even get you, you know, it's just a little small challenge for them, as to say, you know yourself. And Sergio Perez, I noticed at the start, was wow, he man's treated like a 100-time world champion everywhere you go. Perez, Perez, Perez out there. It really was. And the second he got in for the parade lap, everyone else was ignored. Perez just conquering hero, like, you know, the second
Mm.
he came into it. You know, it's great to see, you know, yourself, the backing of the local guy and all this sort of crack. You know, he's Mexican, and
We
you
go.
know, everybody rooting for him. It's nice to see it, Aidan, isn't it?
That's it. And I suppose, you know, the thing I ask every week is, did it go according to as we might have thought it did, or did it
What?
spring up a few surprises and things we didn't expect? Like, for instance, was that lovely safety car brought into action and
Oh,
let me guess, they were throwing out penalty points like confetti again.
actually, the funny thing is there wasn't that much penalty points. Qualifying was a funny one, I have to admit. That really happened in Q1 until about 2 minutes and 13 seconds, 2 minutes and 10 seconds, 2 minutes and five, somewhere around there towards the end, where loads of cars backed up, and they were all just parking there, you know, waiting for that final fast lap. And of course, who was on the front of that little batch of cars, only for George Russell, who was sitting there? Now, everybody went running out, everybody did a good thing. George got a little tiny tap on the wrist. That wasn't too much. He was investigated for it, but of course, it wasn't much of a tap on the wrist, which I was kind of surprised at. He didn't get a bigger penalty because there is an unwritten rule. The end of the pit lane, the light is green. You don't sit there. You don't stop the car and block everybody behind you. So I was kind of a bit surprised. It was investigated. It was all the usual notice by the stewards and all this sort of crack, but they didn't really do much about it, I have to admit. There was also, Q1 was kind of big on the kind of potential penalties, but nothing actually happened, which was kind of mad, really, because you had car number one, which was Max Verstappen. He was investigated for speeding, basically, or not speeding, sorry, impeding another driver on exiting the pits. So that was interesting, but he got away with that. No, and I mean, a yellow flag also had Alonso being investigated because of the fact that they said he was speeding under the yellow flag in the area. So that was interesting too. There was just so many cars out. It was absolute chaos, and there was a few. I expected, shall we say, a few penalties to be handed out, but they were kind of very. I don't know. Maybe they were in a good humor this weekend. Maybe they were in a good humor.
What's rare is wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I have to admit, it is really. So they didn't really do much in the way of handouts. They kind of noticed a lot in Q1, which was interesting enough in itself, because not really an awful lot happened till the end. But then there was so many cars on the track. It was just, is he impeding me? Is that impeding this? Is that fella in the wrong place over there? Not really that much happened. I have to admit, Fernando Alonso had a very hard time with it. I mean, he third corner of the track, he had a very unusual, and I would say unusual, slow speed spin, which was kind of great. It was unbelievable for him. It was a kind of a point where even if he's in a bad car, you were kind of surprised, And Lando Norris had a bad lap, but there was yellow flags out.
Yeah.
And with the yellow flags, of course, you can't increase your time. First bad lap was dreadful. It was all over the place and it got nowhere. And then he couldn't improve on his next lap. So the man was last, which is not something you hear with Lando Norris. The other people that were out with Ocon, Magnussen, Stroll, and Sargent. Norris in last place, and Hamilton adding to the investigation at that stage too for speeding under the yellow flag. Again, not much.
Do you know, I mean, from the point of view, was we remember all the slap in the hand he got in the previous ones. You think he'd be watching his P's and Q's in this one,
You would think so, between himself now and Hamilton and Alonso and everybody.
I think he's what we would call in Ireland a rebel Formula One driver.
A rebel Formula One driver. I actually think Alonso would have been handed out. Maybe would have been handed out a penalty, and Norris too if they hadn't done any good times. But because I think the two of them did miserably, they just left them alone. Hamilton and Max, I think they were being a bit cheeky trying to hand them out anything. Russell, though, I was kind of very surprised sitting at the end of the pit lane like that. You can't do that, blocking the rest of the cars. You can't do that, So I was very surprised. I have to admit about that. Now, Q2 was a lot of an easier session, really. There was none of those sort of messing around there. Sergio Perez out nice and early, doing a good job. Alex Albon in the Williams did a flying lap, I can tell you, a cracking lap. And the second lap was much better. The first lap he did was a pretty good lap, but the car was all over the road. Now, obviously, the following laps, as the track gets rubbered in, everybody was going faster and faster, and he was hoping to do the same thing. But of course, what happened? Went out the white lines, and that's a big not counted anymore. Off you go, nasty. So, I mean, out the second one, we had Albon, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, and Gasly, and Alonso, which is mad considering. How many podiums he had to start of this year. It was like third. And suddenly he's out in Q2. Q3 was I have to admit, a bit different. The Ferraris, who were mid-range the whole time, topped the charts, actually. They're absolutely flying around. They made it a 1-2 with Leclerc on the front and Sainz second. Now, that was something nobody expected. So there you go. Is it something no one expected? No one expected two Ferraris to be first and second. although the race pace is not as good as we know. But that was weird. It was weird, and I have to admit, Danny Ricciardo did a stellar job as well. Really did. He's the only AlphaTauri on the track, and he didn't really improve much, but he was there and he did quite well on the day. I think the man has something to prove at the minute, which is good to see. But the second half of Q1, no one really advanced or improved their times. I think it was just like the track had given enough, and that was it. You weren't getting any more. So I mean, at the end of it all, you had Charles Leclerc on pole position for the Mexico Grand Prix, and like his teammate Sainz, what a great wingman, in second place. Now we know the Ferraris are hard on the tires, so will that transfer? Will that change into race pace? Or I suppose on race day, who's to say? But I mean, it's been so long since we've seen a Ferrari lockout. It was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, Max Verstappen could only manage third against the two of them in the speed. Like, you know what I mean? I just thought it was amazing. And that was followed in fourth place by Danny Ricciardo. I mean, this man's going to be in Formula One next year permanently again. He's on loan to AlphaTauri. He's broken his finger. He's back again. And the man's doing a staggeringly good job, I have to admit. He just something else. It really was. He did just such a great job. It's unbelievable. Behind them was Hamilton and Piastri, Russell Bottas and Zhou Intent. The Alfa Romeo has seen a bit of a resurgence as well. But that all changed in the race. To be honest with you, it's a 71 lap race, Aidan, and I would have said a lot of it, not really a whole lot happened. And there was moments, there was a bit of lucky strategy, reasonable strategy, and a couple of elements of bad strategy, one would say. But it was
the bad and the ugly kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. But you would have said the peculiar things on it was, of course, Lando Norris last, and Ferrari's locking out the front. That was something I don't think anybody saw. But I mean, it was a strange situation as the lights went out. Oh, the worst thing at all could possibly happen. And that's the two Ferraris and the two Red Bulls were having a right ding-dong into that first corner, I can tell you. Max slipped in, gone from third all the way up and through and into first place, while the two of them were fighting with Sergio Perez. And Checo decides, I'm going to turn now a little early to the first corner, hops up in the air and takes himself completely off the track and damages Leclerc's car. I mean, you're at the Mexican Grand Prix and the local heroes out on the first corner. You know what I mean? It was just, disaster time. It really was. He was hoping for a good day. And I suppose, look, it's like everything. A home match can have it in two ways, can't it? It can lift you up one way, but it can make you maybe a bit over-eager, over-enthusiastic, or maybe feel a bit bulletproof or something, at the same time. And, I don't know what he was doing. He really just expected that Ferrari to disappear. It was the only way he wasn't going to hit it, as if the Ferrari disappeared. And it didn't disappear, of course, not in the least bit. And, Perez, he managed to get it back around to the pits, but he was out of the race. And Leclerc was kind of nursing an end plate, which had come off, which was very interesting because he stayed out. Well, I would have thought he would have came in for a new nose, but no, Leclerc didn't come in for a new nose. He stayed out. Now, the front wing damage, the end plate was actually hanging off the car. So if that's the front wing, it was kind of bouncing around like that a bit. You could say.
How would that affect? How would that affect the performance? And it would, I suppose, in a dramatic way. In what way?
Yeah. No, that side of the car, the left-hand side of the car, instead of the air traveling across and up and over the car, it was basically flying off the side there. And this side was going up and over the car. So it was just flying off. It would totally reduce downforce on the left-hand side of the car, totally, because it's slipping away rather than pushing over the car and pushing the car down more. You're kind of not getting as much on the on the left-hand side because it's swiping off it. So I mean that would have definitely would slow you down. It wouldn't slow you down dramatically, but would slow you down a wee bit and cause, how would I put it? It might cause the front of the car to be a little loose as well, which wouldn't be a great situation in these machines. But he decided to stay out. I thought that was odd because the black and white, they flagged somebody in before for damage on the car to come in and get it changed, whether they like it or not, because it's dangerous. But absolutely lucky for him, I have to admit, the end plate actually fell off the car just before the end of lap 3. So he was a happy camper because it was gone. Now they couldn't pull him in, and he was holding on to second place quite well at the time. Even though he was getting a bit of an armful of turn on a couple of the corners, it was quite, you could see he was working a bit harder in some cases. But, he managed to stay there. But of course, that little end play falling off, whoops, we have a virtual safety car, because where did it fall? On the track. So they had to retrieve that off the track, which was unfortunate. But look, if you're going to have a safety car, the virtual is good because everybody maintains their distance. You're not suddenly 20 seconds ahead and now he's right on your back axle, which I suppose is the idea behind it. Yourself. So it wasn't so bad, I suppose. So lap 5, yeah, the virtual safety car, it wasn't out for very long. I have to admit. A bad call actually came in from McLaren because they put Lando Norris on the soft or on the medium tires, or was it the soft tires? Sorry, and everyone else on the medium tires. The idea was to get up from last place and really overtake a lot of people. It didn't really happen, I have to admit. It didn't really get anywhere. All of a sudden, he didn't get very far, and he had just passed the pits as the virtual safety car came out. It would have been a great time to dive in and get sort of, medium or hard tires on the car. But by the time he came back around, it was gone. The virtual safety car was gone and we were racing again. And those soft tires really weren't, I don't think they were performing that well. So much so that he had to pull in on lap 12 and change the tires, which just, wasn't a great situation, really. It was very early for the soft tires. I mean, he didn't pit again. He went out in the hards and he was grand, but it was kind of a bit of a bad call. I thought they would have left them out and he would have taken up more places on the soft tire, but they just didn't really, I suppose, get turned on the day. The heat wasn't really in them. They just didn't come. Now, that didn't stop Lando Norris, I can tell you. Slowly but surely, he was getting quicker and passing cars. And towards the end, wow, it was amazing, I have to admit, towards the end. I'll come back to him in a few minutes, but, there was a few interesting changes, I have to admit, because Max Verstappen came in lap 27 and he went out in hard tires. Now, Leclerc was, a good bit in front of him, 7 laps, but in 7 laps, sort of, Max managed to haul in 11 seconds, and the Ferraris were not pulling those cars in. They just wanted them to stay out. I even got a radio message at one stage, how's the car feeling? And Leclerc said, car's fine, I can keep going another while yet. Which I was kind of surprised because it was a very long stint on the medium tires. The hard tires last very well, while I suppose Max Verstappen's gaining on him like a ton of bricks from behind. And the same happened with Carlos Sainz. They waited so long that Hamilton actually managed to jump Sainz because he had gone earlier for the undercut in the hard tires and was putting in faster times. I think both Ferraris would have benefited massively if they had pulled them in earlier. They just waited so long, before coming in on those medium tires. I think it was a big, big, big mistake now, to be quite honest with you. Another fella bad calls was George Russell. They'd left him out in order to try and block Max Verstappen so that maybe Hamilton could get closer to Leclerc and Verstappen. It didn't really work. Max Verstappen basically made mincemeat of him. Just shot on by and passed him so fast you would not believe. And George was not happy because they pitted him and he came out in 10th place. And, it was a bad call. It was bad planning, really, on their part. They should have just brought him in earlier and he'd have come out in 7th or 8th, which would have been a big difference than coming out in 10th place. Now George is he's no slouch. He's very good in the car, but it would just suit it a lot better. He didn't manage to block Max at all. Just his Max in the car was just so fast. There was nothing he could do about it. He just got mugged.
It's about being screwed really on the track, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really, yeah. And I mean, it's just the way it was. Kevin Magnussen actually had an interesting time on the track. He went very far, he went very wide, I have to admit, at one stage around the last corner. And then on his next lap out, he decided, well, that's it now. I've had enough. And into the barrier, very hard into the barrier. So much so the barrier was damaged and they had to call out. They had to actually basically, safety car came out. Yeah, that was fine. Max Verstappen dodges in because the funny thing was Max actually did a two-stop strategy. He came out in those hard tires. He drove them so hard to catch Leclerc. There was no way they were going to finish to last to the end of the race. So when the safety car came out, talk about manna from heaven. So he pulled in and came out in first place and happy camper no end because, of course, he lost half the amount of time because the safety car was out. But they were all called in. Race had to be stopped. Barrier had to be fixed. Barrier was in bad condition. Now, we don't like things like hearing races stopped, but in this situation, it was dangerous. Kevin Magnussen's car was over the corner. It was catching on fire. Kevin Magnussen himself was absolutely fine. But the guys went out, recovered the car, did a fantastic job of getting that barrier in quick. I mean, these guys, a lot of these people that are there at the track, helping on the track, are they're free, they're voluntary. And I mean, the speed and, the amount to take, the amount to do on the day and how efficient you are, they should be commended for that, really. And, yeah, you had some professionals out there, as to say, full-time people repairing the barrier. But,
Like yourself.
What? Yeah, exactly. But what the volunteers are doing, you just couldn't fault them. The restart was interesting too, Ed, and I'm sure you saw it yourself with the cars weaving around on the restart. I was actually thought there was going, was going to be accidents left, right, and centre, I have to admit. And the one that I thought was an absolute genius out there was Lando Norris because, on the restart, yeah, he absolutely got swamped. Cars left and right, over one side, over the other side. He had to actually back off slightly. He lost a few places. He wasn't a happy camper. But how somebody didn't hit him, I'm still lost. And he's going left to miss one guy, then going right to miss the next guy. And, you're talking about an inch or two. And
he must have went lower a couple of days before the race or something.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know how he did it. I really, how he kept that car on the road, I have no idea. And how somebody didn't hit him. And it wouldn't have been his fault. He was being absolutely swamped and attacked and guys coming in and closing in on him. And I don't know how he, 10 out of 10. Great job. Absolutely great job. The race went on pretty much normal onto that. Poor Fernando Alonso had to retire the car in lap 48. We kind of knew there was something wrong with that car. It was going so slow, which was a pity. Yuki Tsunoda, oh, what a guy. Alpha Tauri had Danny Ricciardo in the top 10 doing a massive job. Now, I mean, what is the first thing a driver has to do? Finish ahead of his teammate. And Yuki Tsunoda was not ahead of the fill-in driver. So that wasn't good. So he got a little bit, how will I put it? A little bit overexcited trying to get into 10th place past Oscar Piastri. He bumped Piastri and knocked him slightly on the back tyre. No damage done. But, you could see the car moved by about an inch in the back, which I'm sure Piastri wasn't very happy about, I can tell you. That was on that was on turn 2. And the very next lap, turn 1, he tips him again. And this time he puts
just himself. Just to let him know he's there, just.
Absolutely. And Tsunoda puts
You're not in Butlins now, he says, huh?
Yeah. And he just puts himself completely off the track. Now, it was a stupid thing he was doing. The first time he wasn't going to get by, and he hit Piastri. Tsunoda's fault. And this time, then, at the end of the first turn, he did exactly the same as Checo Perez did. He turned early, expecting the car beside him not to be there. He didn't even turn for the corner. He turned early, and he went off the track. I mean, rookie moment. But what really annoyed me was, he went all the way from 8th. He was in the top 10. He was doing okay, and he fell all the way back to 16th because of it. And Nasty. He could have fallen less because he spent his time punching the air, giving out. in the car instead of recovering it back onto the track as fast as was humanly possible. And I'd say he easily lost 3 or 4 places because of it, which, very unprofessional, you'd have to say. Very, very, very naughty. And if I was the team, I'd be waggling the old finger personally at the end of the race. What was nice to see towards the end was McLaren. Lando Norris on a stormer. And, of course, Oscar Piastri was in front of him in 7th. And, the team got onto Piastri and they said, now, Lando's coming up behind you. You'll have to give the place unless you can go half a second faster per lap. Given the opportunity. Now, half a second faster on laps, no easy feat for a guy who's already driving on top form. So, no, he gave the place away. McLaren, he did it so smooth, I have to admit. You just couldn't fault him. Went exactly at the right time, not to slow himself down, not to delay his teammate. You just have to give that. You have to say something about that team. They've got 2 great drivers, team players, and just everything's going right for them. I want them to be world champions.
So that brings us on to who finished in the top 5.
Well, yes, I have to admit, top 10 was, Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton managed to get past a damaged Charles Leclerc, who was going not as quick as normal, unfortunately, and the day didn't end up with him. But you did have Leclerc and Sainz in 3rd and 4th, which is quite good. And Lando Norris finished in 6th place. He actually took George Russell towards the end, and he just mugged him. He absolutely mugged him. It was brilliant. And behind Russell was Danny Ricciardo, who I have to admit did a great race. Then Oscar Piastri, Alex Albon, and Esteban Ocon. Man of the day goes to Lando Norris. What a drive. Exceptional. He started last. It all went bad for him, yet he just fought his way through. And I can tell you, that man definitely overtake of the day more than once. And a special mention to Danny Ricciardo. He did an incredible job in that car. And, Checo Perez is not looking well. He put himself off the track. We all know if he loses that 2nd place, he might be driving a Red Bull next year. Danny Ricciardo looks very, very good for that spot at the moment,
And so that brings us on to the Brazilian Grand Prix. And just to take people through with 7 minutes left now, and we'll just go through the schedule now for on the 3rd practice 1. That's from 2:30 to 3:30, and then also on the 3rd then is the qualifying, and that's on 6 o'clock until 7. And moving on to the 4th is the sprint shootout from 2 to 2:45, and then also on the 4th is the sprint from 4:30 to 6:30 till 7:30, and of course on the 5th of November is the race itself. So I suppose looking at the track itself as well. Yeah, it's not really a straightforward track. There's there's 2, maybe 3 stretches, but it's very windy and bendy then in other parts.
I have to admit, a lot of drivers absolutely love the Brazilian Grand Prix. They're so long. It was normally either the first or the last race of the year, not this year. But there is 3 races left to go, and this is one of them. And I have to admit, a lot of people absolutely love this track. Turn 5, or where am I? Sorry, go back. Turns 12 and 13 normally bring out great overtaking points. Michael Schumacher has taken a fair few people on them, I can tell you. And then to watch the cars sweeping up side by side in some cases, up through 14 and 15. It's a magical track, this. You've got to absolutely love it. It's very fast until, of course, you get into Sector 2. Sector 2 really slows them down. Turn 8, Turn 9, Turn 10, all very bad turns, but overall, quite a fast track. McLaren should run very well on this track, and Williams should be very happy campers on this track too. It's going to be a lot of fun. The 2 DRS zones look quite good too, Aidan. I have to admit, Turn 1 is not that bad of a turn, I have to admit, but there could be a few mishaps there now because, of course, it turns and goes downhill immediately through Turns 2 and into Turn 3. So, and then you have another DRS zone there. So that should be very interesting, I have to admit. should give us a few interesting things on today. What do you think it looks like? We do this, what the track looks like the last few times. What do you think it looks like? I can't make it
Yeah,
out.
I don't think. I think a part of it kind of looks like a part of a snake or something. You know, the head of a snake or that. But yeah, it is kind of. It's going to be interesting, I suppose. Like we always say, it's going to be interesting as regards pit stop strategy. I suppose tire selection, but I suppose with it being Brazil, it's going to be warm. You'd imagine it's going to be warm. It's a warm country. So I suppose from that point of view, what are your thoughts on tire selection and pit stop?
It's such a fast track. I think definitely tire wear could be an issue with that heat and with the speed of the track. Personally, I could see two stops being very quick. A soft and two mediums will get you to the end of the race. If anyone can pull them mediums out quite a long time and get in two softs, you'd be laughing. But I cannot see that happening. I'd say you're talking about a soft and two mediums. Probably most will go on the soft at the start. If anyone tries hard tires, it could be interesting. You might be able to do a one stop with that, with a hard and a medium, perhaps. I'm not sure that's going to do much for it because it is a super fast track. And, the thing about it is, with hard tires, you're going to be a little bit slower. You're going to lose a lot of time on this one. So I couldn't really, see much of that happening, I have to admit. I think you're only going to go on hard tires if you're on the back 10 rather than the front 10. Now, pole position last year, and this is where it gets interesting, was actually for a Haas car. Kevin Magnussen, believe it or believe it not, got pole position last year. Now, that's not the way the race ended up. The race ended up with George Russell winning, Lewis Hamilton second, and Carlos Sainz third. The end of the year seems to suit the Mercedes quite a lot because, last year was the same as this year. They were very lackluster in the first half of the year, and then they kind of improved as it went on. And then the last few races they did really well, which has seen Hamilton second twice now, and now we're in Brazil, they'll probably do reasonably well too. So you'll see him pulling up a little bit. That, of course, could be bad news for Checo Perez, but we won't go there. And, of course, the fastest lap last year was a 1:13.7 by George Russell. I think you won't beat that, but I think it'll be close. I think it'll be pretty close. Cars are a little bit heavier with the upgrades and things like that. They're probably going to be very close to that time, I would dare say. And it was a good race last year. I'm sure it's like everything. It is a fantastic track. Races have been held there 50 times at this stage, which is quite good, and it's kind of a carnival atmosphere in the place too, which is very good. I'm sure we'll be looking forward to it, Aidan. What would you say?
That's it. It's going to be very interesting. And I suppose your top five, how it's going to finish.
Well, there is a bit of a triple threat to Red Bull here, because Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren are all catching fast. They're not catching Max Verstappen, but they are catching Sergio Perez. We're going to put Max on first again. He's 16 wins in 1 year now, so he's after beating his championship. Him and Vettel doing 15 times in a year. So there you go. Would he make it 17 times in a year? I'd say so. This track's going to suit him down to the ground. Fast, and that's what he loves. Absolutely loves. Now, I'm going to say to you, I could see Lando Norris second or third. I hate to say it unless he has a bad qualifying like the last time. I can see Lando Norris second or third. My money would be on second. And I think Checo Perez needs third. I don't think it's going to happen. He's not driving very well here. I'm going to give third to Hamilton and Charles Leclerc on his back axle. I'll put it like that to you. That's a good way of putting it, isn't it?
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. And just to let people know how the driver standings are at the moment. In first is Max Verstappen on 491 points, and then a sizable distance behind then is Sergio Perez in second on 240, and 20 points behind him then is Lewis Hamilton in third, Carlos Sainz in fourth on 183. In fifth is Fernando Alonso on 183, also on 183. And then slightly behind then in sixth place is Lando Norris on 169. Charles Leclerc on 166 in seventh. In eighth, then George Russell on 151. And then in ninth is Oscar Piastri and on 87. And of course, Pierre Gasly in 10th on 56. So that's just bringing everyone up to date on the standings there. So it's really sets it up for a good finish on a good race on Sunday. So listen, thanks very much, Michael, for taking the time out to do Formula One. Last word on Formula One, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.
No problems. Talk to you then, Aidan.
No problem. Thanks very much. And that was Michael. That was Michael O'Grady, our